They discovered a shocking secret to unstoppable faith as God fights their every battle. Few knew what truly happened that night in the dusty streets of Jericho. The shadows danced around the crumbling walls, whispering secrets of a faith that defied reason. It was a night that would carve itself into the hearts of those who witnessed it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a strange silence cloaked the city. It was more than just a pause in the rush of life. It felt like the very air was holding its breath, waiting for something miraculous to unfold. In the eyes of the townsfolk, fear shone bright. Rumors of the Israelite spies had crawled through the alleys like an unseen fog, chilling every spine. They spoke of a deep-rooted God-given promise, of victories against impossible odds. Rachab, a woman of the night, stood at her window. Her heart pounded like thunder, anxiety tightening her chest. Would she risk everything for this elusive faith that sparked hope? Word had spread of what the Israelites were bringing, something more powerful than weapons or armies. When she glimpsed the flashing lights of the Israelite encampment, her mind raced. Was it fate? Was this God's hand moving through her life? Jericho's towering walls, once a fortress, now felt like a prison. The choice hung heavy in the air. Trust in her people or dare to believe in something greater? The very ground beneath her quaked with anticipation, tension electrifying every heartbeat. She trembled as she clutched the crimson cord, her lifeline, her testament, a symbol of her courageous decision to embrace the unknown. Suddenly, piercing shouts drew her attention. The sound of marching feet echoed in the stillness, hauntingly rhythmic. Soldiers! Her heart lurched as the realization struck. The Israelites were circling her city, chanting prayers that echoed through the dim alleys. It was a sound steeped in belief, in miracles waiting to happen. Darkness clashed with the brilliance of their faith, each roar growing louder, shaking the very foundations of her doubt. But outside, would it be enough? The walls loomed tall and daunting, a fortress of despair. What if they failed? What if their cries were swallowed by silence? What if her choice to trust brought doom instead of salvation? Rachab's hands trembled, and a lump formed in her throat. The choice was gut-wrenchingly clear, yet clouded with uncertainty. Then, a flicker of light. A flicker of hope. As if the heavens had opened, the stars twinkled down, as though approving her choice. Could faith be this powerful? She closed her eyes, letting the whispers of the night wash over her. Suddenly, she felt that she was not alone. The shouts from outside mixed with her own murmurs to form a sound more potent than any weapon. Was God truly fighting their battles for them? What happened next would change everything. Would her act of faith save her? Would the walls come crashing down, or would her choice seal her fate? The tension surged, begging the question, what lies beyond the call of faith? What larger plan awaited just beyond the walls of Jericho? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the night deepened, the rhythmic pulse of the Israelite shouts intertwined with the heartbeat of Jericho itself. Those inside the walls sensed a brewing storm, an electricity that sparked curiosity and dread in equal measure. Rachab, meanwhile, moved away from the window, her heart now aflame with a daring hope she scarcely recognized as her own. She turned her gaze toward her surroundings, the flickering oil lamps casting shadows that danced across the walls, conjuring shapes both familiar and strange. What of her life, her choices? The street outside harbored memories, the laughter of neighbors and the silent pacts made behind closed doors. Yet, the still night whispered a stark reminder, those walls once deemed her strong now felt like a cage. In her mind surged the stories passed down through generations, struggles of faith, grace, and redemption. It was as if the very air she breathed held fragments of those who had gone before her. Had they also felt this tempest of choice within? Moments that would define their destinies hung suspended like the stars above, conspiring to enlighten her path. With a trembling hand, Rachab reached for the crimson cord once more, her fingers brushing against its texture solid, yet fragile. A symbol of her audacity, a symbol of her belief in the unseen, then came a sound like distant thunder. The ground shook beneath her feet, reverberating with the fervor of the Israelite march. With each step they took, she felt the walls shudder, as if they too were contemplating a surrender. The air was thick with a presence she couldn't quite grasp, a divine undercurrent flowing through the very fabric of the night. Rachab moved closer to the window again, unafraid now, yearning to witness the unfolding drama beneath the celestial tapestry. Outside, the Israelite leaders whispered audible prayers, their tones rising above the thrumming of the moment. Joshua's voice, strong and imbued with an unshakable conviction, called upon the heavens to bear witness as they proceeded with their divine mission. Each prayer seemed to dissolve the doubt that clung to Rachab, revealing a profound truth: their faith was not a solitary endeavor, but a collective pursuit. It beckoned, it invited, it demanded belief in the possibilities of salvation. Will faith alone lead them to victory? Rachab pondered, her mind swirling with the implications. The words of her forebears echoed in her ears: the heart and spirit are stronger than stone. They encouraged courage, stoked the flames of bravery, igniting passions merely thought to be extinguished. Perhaps the Israelites knew something deeper than mere battle tactics, perhaps they understood that what lay beyond those walls wasn't just freedom but fulfillment, divine redemption. As she clutched the cord tighter, Rachab felt a warmth envelop her, not from the flickering flames, but from a burning certainty blossoming within. Would she belong to this new vision, this powerful force of faith? The uncertainty nagged at her. Would the price for her allegiance be too great? She couldn't shake the image of her own people watching, anticipating the inevitable. What would become of their whispers and fear once the walls were no more? Still, doubt lingered, the question of identity a whirling tempest that straddled faith and fear. What brought me to this moment? She asked herself. In the stillness, a flicker of insight struck her: perhaps it wasn't just about her own survival, but something vast and encompassing, echoing through time and space. What if this night was about more than her personal salvation? What if her decision could also serve as a beacon of hope for those who had long since deemed themselves unworthy of redemption? At that moment, the night air thickened, pregnant with potential. As she turned her gaze back toward the shadows cheering for liberation, one thought transcended the chaos: what other unexpected allies might rise from the ruins of disbelief and surrender? Could the promise of a new dawn begin to echo in the cracks of ancient fears? And so she surrendered to the unfolding mystery of faith and fate, wondering if perhaps, for every heart that dares to believe, the true battle was not solely against the walls of Jericho, but against the limits we set upon ourselves. What power lies in the moment between fear and faith? As the breath of dawn painted the horizon with hues of gold and pink, Rachab found herself caught in the stillness before the storm. The wails of a new day broke the quiet spell, a stark reminder of the choices that lay ahead. The crimson cord hung by her side, a sentinel of hope and uncertainty. Outside, the rhythmic silence felt almost sacred, as though the world held its breath, waiting for the sacred clash of faith and fear. She stepped closer to the window. The town was waking up slowly, the sounds of morning blending with the whispers of an ominous past. Jericho was a place of many stories: the laughter of children playing in the streets, the echo of tradesmen peddling their wares, the solemn prayers of the faithful. Yet beneath the surface lay a tension that could no longer be ignored. People stirred unaware of the divine orchestrations unfolding just beyond their walls. Across the city, Rachab could see figures moving with purpose. The Israelites, steadfast and resolute, assembled in their ranks. Their spirits elevated, it was evident they knew they were partaking in something far greater than a mere conquest. They were wrestling with the tapestry of destiny itself. Each soldier, a thread in the intricate weave of a promise that transcended time. In her heart, emotions flared: fear battled against an unexpected excitement. Was it truly possible to leap into the unknown and emerge changed? Was she prepared to stand alongside the very force her people had once deemed a threat? Rachab let her thoughts wander to the stories of her ancestors, stories of boldness and grace that oftentimes flourished against insurmountable odds. Had they dared to embrace the unknown with as much fervor? Suddenly, the airs shifted, a trumpet blared from the Israelite encampment. It wasn't just a call to arms, it was a testament of faith. Rachab felt her heart race, the sound reverberated within her being, awakening not just her spirit but the silent whispers of those who had preceded her. At that moment, she knew she was no outsider in this unfolding drama, she was being led into a mystery far beyond herself. Clutching her cord tightly, she recalled the words of the unseen voice that had beckoned her from the shadows. "You shall not remain invisible," it seemed to say, "for every act of courage has the power to reshape destinies." With trembling conviction, she pondered deeply. Could her belief in these strangers, in their unseen God, pull away the ivy of her past and provide a bridge to something new? Each blast of the trumpet was more than mere sound, it was an invitation to a collective faith. The Israelites, with their steadfast trust in their God, began their approach towards Jericho's walls. Rachab's heart surged as she felt the weight of their journey intertwined with her own. In every beat, in every echo of that trumpet, was a reminder that the audacity to believe could break down barriers within and without. Her soul reached for clarity, that unrepentant yearning for belonging, for redemption. If faith can move mountains, she mused, what good might come if I select a side? The questions hung heavy in the air. What happens when one chooses faith over fear? When one claims a new identity beyond labels that once confined? Clouds rolled in, casting fleeting shadows over Jericho as the sun rose higher. Rachab felt a tremor of anticipation echo through the very stones beneath her feet. What would happen when the dust settled? Would she emerge as a beacon of redemption or a casualty of fear? In this stillness tinged with hesitation, Rachab became aware that she was not just an observer, she was woven into this sacred epic. The moment was at hand, a crucible of choices spun with divine intent. Would she have the courage to lay her faith bare, to step into the light incognito and embrace a new life amidst the echoes of the past? As she remained poised at the edge of this profound decision, Rachab couldn't help but wonder, how does one reconcile fear of the past with the promise of a vibrant future? What miracles await those willing to stand at the threshold of belief? The sun's early rays poured through Rachab's window, illuminating the room and casting long shadows against the dusty floor. The winds of urgency swept through Jericho as the Israelites gathered outside, their voices rising like the crescendo of a symphony, each note tinged with expectation and hope. The air was thick, heavy with impending change, and Rachab could feel it at the core of her being, pulling her toward the edge of destiny. As she stood at the precipice of her decision, memories flooded her mind, fragments of laughter shared with friends, whispers of fear exchanged with kin. The world outside her small abode felt vast and terrifying, yet the pull of faith encircled her like a cocoon of warmth. In this moment of reflection, Rachab sensed a presence, not merely external but within the very fibers of her heart. Each heartbeat seemed to resonate with the divine rhythm she had only begun to understand. From the window, she noticed figures navigating through the streets, a mix of identities among the Israelites and the townsfolk alike. Some greeted each other in familiarity, while others exchanged wary glances. It struck her as strange that beneath the surface of a shout or a smile, deeper truths lay hidden. Fear danced on the tongues of some, while faith glimmered like a distant star in the eyes of others. In the folds of that busy morning, Rachab caught sight of the two spies she had sheltered. They stood slightly apart from the others, their faces set like flint, resolute yet soft. There was a knowing in their gaze that spoke of battles faced and stories untold. A deeper wisdom gleaned from walking a path fraught with uncertainty. The two men exchanged hurried words with one another, the gravity of their purpose evident not just in their conversation but in their stance against the chaos around them. Suddenly, the sound of the trumpets broke the tension, sharpening the air like the crack of an ancient whip. The resounding tones filled Rachab's heart, and she felt an irresistible urge to join that chorus of belief. It echoed against every doubt she'd ever harbored. With the crimson cord still clasped in her hand, Rachab took a step closer to the door, her feet hovering above the threshold of change. But as she prepared to claim a new identity, a tightly held fear wrestled for dominance. What if the choices she made did not lead to salvation but to her undoing? What if, in shepherding the spies, she had unwittingly placed herself and her family beyond the pale of Jericho's protection? The uncertainties loomed like a dark cloud at the edge of an otherwise clear sky, threatening to eclipse her burgeoning faith. As the trumpet blasts continued and the people began to gather, a voice whispered within her, urging her to remember the stories passed down through generations. Heroes of faith who stood against giants, who faced walls that seemed insurmountable. Rachab felt a spark of courage lighten the darkness in her heart. Her ancestors' lessons rang true. Those who had ventured out in uncertainty had often found the path illuminated in unexpected ways. Drawing a deep breath, she decided to take that leap of faith, the choice to join in the unfolding divine drama. How could she remain still when the very essence of existence beckoned her to move? Gripping the crimson cord, she stepped out of her dwelling, her heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of the trumpets that heralded a powerful uprising. As she approached the gathering crowd, the looming walls of Jericho no longer appeared as insurmountable. Rather, they stood as monuments to every doubt and fear she had held on to, waiting to become the backdrop against which her faith would unfurl. The very sound that once filled her with trepidation now wove a series of blessings into the air, each note laced with a promise of deliverance. Yet, even as she moved closer to the thrumming heart of the assembly, a question lingered: when faith rises in the face of towering fears, what truths lie waiting to be unearthed? What layers of her past would crumble to reveal a future adorned solely by the grace of believing? Rachab pressed onward, her spirit alight with the ecstatic tension of possibility. As Rachab stepped into the midst of the gathering, a palpable energy enveloped her, a collective pulse of faith, strong and resonant, binding strangers in a shared purpose. The voices rose and fell like the restless sea, surging with anticipation and unyielding resolve. Each face, worn by the weight of struggle, reflected shards of hope that shone brighter against the backdrop of despair. She felt as if she were straddling the threshold between two worlds, the one she had always known and a beckoning horizon, rich with promise. The air swirled around her, electric with the whispers of the testimonies of those who had come before. Rachab could almost hear their stories vibrate through the very ground beneath her feet. Her mind painted pictures of bare feet trotting down untouched paths, armies standing against insurmountable odds, and miraculous waters rising to subdue an unrelenting tide. Each tale was a stitch binding the fabric of their collective memory, a fabric woven intricately with threads of belief and supernatural intervention. Outside, the fortified walls of Jericho loomed like titans, seemingly indifferent to the spirit swelling among the people. Rachab, however, felt a stirring within her deepened resolve. The crimson cord she held became more than just a tangible symbol of her pact with the spies, it transformed into a beacon, a vibrant thread in the tapestry of destiny. It symbolized not only her past but her emergence into a new reality defined by courage and the grace to embrace change. As she stood among the gathering throng, she could see the two spies perched on the fringes, their eyes scanning the atmosphere with the acuity of men seasoned by trials. They spoke urgently with voices hushed yet fervent, seemingly oblivious to the growing commotion around them. In that moment, Rachab found herself intrigued. What wisdom had they gleaned from their journey? What truths had they tasted that might illuminate the murky waters of uncertainty? Suddenly, a figure emerged from the crowd, a leader whose presence radiated authority and reassurance. It was Joshua, bearing a countenance marked by both strength and deep-seated faith. His voice resonated clearly as he recounted the promises of their God, recounting miraculous victories and divine provisions bestowed upon Israel. Rachab's heart thudded in time with his words, for they were not merely tales but assurances that vibrated deep within her spirit. The people listened, entranced, each word a thread weaving together their fears into a unified front. Yet amidst the encouragement, Rachab felt the weight of her own identity gnaw at her thoughts. She had lived in Jericho, a city marked by its own darkness, accustomed to a life that felt mired in acceptance of the status quo. Yet here, surrounded by the fervor of impending change, she sensed a profound truth whispering through the tumult. Could her past be a launch pad for her future? With each beat of Joshua's stirring recounting, her past began to meld into her present, reshaping the narrative of who she was. As battles of faith were recounted, she found herself consumed by reflections of her own struggles, her own battles, moments where fear had steered her steps and where faith wrestled for mastery. She had played the role of the outcast and the unworthy, yet perhaps a more profound purpose lay dormant within her. Joshua's voice crescendoed, as he pronounced with clarity and conviction the ultimate truth: the walls shall fall. Rachab felt the resonance of his proclamation wash over her, a promise that transcended physical barriers. Could faith alone shift the very nature of the world around her? Sinking into the depth of that thought, her heart quickened at the prospect. As the crowd erupted into cheers, Rachab pondered deeply. What if her journey shifted the perception of faith itself? In embracing her past and acknowledging her pivotal role, might she not only find her own deliverance but perhaps bring forth an unexpected legacy for her kin? A flicker of hope ignited within, calling into question the entrenched beliefs she had once accepted. With the walls of Jericho standing tall and proud, a fresh apprehension began to bloom alongside her faith. What would it take to usher in the divine transformation she yearned for? Could it require more than just belief, demanding action that tested her courage to its limits? As she gripped the crimson cord tightly, preparing to intertwine her fate with the unfolding narrative, Rachab gazed back at the towering walls that encapsulated her former life. In that instant, questions swirled like autumn leaves caught in a tempest, each beckoning her toward deeper truths yet to be revealed. As the cheers of the gathered crowd filled the air with fervor, Rachab's heart pulsed with a compulsion that resonated beyond mere excitement. The conviction of community, the weight of anticipation, and the resonant words of Joshua whispered a new purpose into her very being. Yet, amid the din of hopes and dreams weaving through the minds and hearts around her, an unsettling stillness brewed within, a quiet beckoning she could not ignore. With the crimson cord still clutched in her hand, she stepped beyond the throbbing mass, seeking solace in a solitary patch of earth where the shadows danced softly under the fading light. The sun had begun its descent, casting long fingers of twilight that seemed to construct barriers against the encroaching night. Rachab closed her eyes, embracing the hush, allowing it to cradle her thoughts like a soft blanket as she pondered the monumental shift that was beginning to take shape within her. What lay behind the walls of Jericho, the bastions of her past, was as much a part of her being as the land itself. It was a city steeped in history, laughter, sorrow, and the echoes of countless lives lived in a daily dance with the unknown. Glancing toward the towering walls, she felt a strange tugging, an urge to explore the heart of the city that had sheltered her existence all these years. Perhaps it was among the remnants of those familiar streets that she would unearth the answers to the questions gnawing at her soul. Her footsteps, insistent yet hesitant, led her to the familiar alleyways, where the stones beneath her feet bore witness to her own story, a story woven with choices, failures, and a relentless struggle for meaning. Each turn whispered forgotten memories, the laughter of childhood, and the ache of decisions that had often felt predestined by her circumstances. But now, in this moment of reflection, she sensed something new, an invitation to unearth the power hidden beneath her experiences. Then an unexpected encounter shattered her reverie. A small group of children, dirt-streaked and with eyes bright as the evening stars, played a game in the remnants of a courtyard. Their laughter, rich and uninhibited, pierced the tension of her contemplations. Immediately, she found herself drawn to them, feeling the lightness of their joy as it ignited the embers of long-dormant hope in her heart. One small girl noticed her and approached, her little hands stained with the dust of the day. "Do you want to play with us?" she asked, her voice filled with innocent curiosity. Rachab hesitated, caught between the weight of her resolve and the simplicity of the invitation. What would it mean to play, to embrace such joy when the fate of her existence hung in the balance? As she knelt before the children, a transformation began to take shape. The laughter enveloped her, washing away the heavy shroud of doubt that had been clinging to her spirit. In that moment, as they played, Rachab could feel a connection to the very essence of life, a reminder of the simplicities that faith, hope, and belonging could provide. Yet, as the sun dipped lower, casting an orange glow that illuminated the walls, she felt the nagging weight of the looming conflict resurface. Beyond the jubilation of the children and the fragile thrill of her discovery, she was painfully aware that the walls were still fortified and that her destiny intertwined with a far greater narrative, the ancient promises yet to be fulfilled. What if, she wondered, her seemingly insignificant act of connection with the innocent were somehow a part of a greater calling? Could it be that healing needed to begin within before the great walls of Jericho fell? In her heart, a new realization took root that perhaps true faith was not just about belief in the miraculous but also in finding the beauty in simplicity, in the intricate fabric of life woven with relationships. With that thought, a question washed through her like a tidal wave. How could the act of one small voice, even if it trembled, alter the fabric of the world around her? And as the sun kissed the horizon, and night began to wrap itself around the land, Rachab felt the stirring of a deeper mystery yet to unfold, unveiling a path toward an uncharted future filled with faith, challenge, and the rediscovery of her own voice. As the night deepened, Rachab lingered with the children, their laughter echoing off the ancient stones of Jericho, mingling with the whispers of dusk. In this fleeting moment, she forgot the weight of her world, surrendering to the warmth of belonging that enveloped her. Yet, the flickers of candlelight from nearby homes illuminated not only her heart but also the shadows of uncertainty that loomed beyond the laughter. From a distance, she suddenly sensed a presence. An older woman, her face lined with the maps of a life well lived, watched from the outskirts of the courtyard. Rachab recognized her at once, the wise matriarch of the neighborhood who had often woven tales of Jericho's past, its triumphs, fears, and hopes. This was Batya, the keeper of folklore that served as the lifeblood of their community. Inviting herself into the game without uttering a word, Batya approached, a knowing smile crinkling the corners of her eyes. Rachab felt an outer pull toward her, as if the threads of their destinies were intertwined, each bearing reflections of the other. As the laughter of the children faded into the backdrop, Rachab felt an insistent tug within her to learn from Batya, to drink from the well of her experience. What do you know of faith, my dear? Batya's voice was low and soothing, inviting without the need for insistence. Rachab hesitated, mulling the question over like a cherished stone. Faith, what did it mean in a world tethered to walls both seen and unseen? I have been taught that faith can move mountains, that it is powerful, Rachab began cautiously. Yet, in this moment, I feel as if it may also be delicate, like the laughter of a child, easily swept away. Batya nodded knowingly, her gaze unwavering. True faith is as much a whisper as it is a roar, she replied, her voice steady. It is found not just in the miraculous, but also in gentle moments, in our unity as a people, and in the courage to speak to one another. What do you mean? Rachab pressed, intrigued by the line that blurred between the monumental and the mundane. Look closer. Batya gestured toward the children, her eyes twinkling. Their connection to Yud is a testament of faith in action, where one heart reaches out to another. Often, it is in these seemingly mundane interactions that miracles begin. Rachab felt a shiver dance through her. Was it possible that the very faith that had summoned the Israelites to confront the walls of Jericho also thrived in the laughter of children and the quiet words of wisdom from elders? That perhaps, the act of communion with one another and with God was the true foundation upon which freedom could be built. Tell me more, Rachab implored, her heart racing with a yearning for understanding. What else do you see? As the stars blinked awake in the twilight, Batya leaned closer, her voice hushed as if sharing a sacred secret. There's a power in unity, Rachab. The walls of Jericho are not just stones and mortar, they encompass all that binds us together, the fears, hopes, and tenacity of every soul within this community. Sometimes, it is in the facing of our greatest fears that we find the strength to tear down the walls that confine us. You hold part of that courage within you, and with it, the spirit of our people. Rachab's heart echoed with an unknown reverence, recognizing the gravity of the moment. Had she herself been part of that courage all along? As she reflected on her choices, her daring escape, and the rope of crimson that now hung like a bright promise in her home, a profound thought took root. What if the act of reaching for others was the key to not just her salvation but the salvation of all? In the silence that followed Batya's words, Rachab felt the swell of an answer dance just beyond her Grapan answer that was not simply a conclusion but an invitation to explore further. What lay before her was intertwined with the echoes of her past, with the cries of the children, and with the whispers of a community yearning for liberation. As shadows fell thicker and stars watched over the quiet street, she couldn't help but wonder, could it be that the very act of connecting, of believing in the power of love and unity, would shift the very foundations of Jericho? And in this burgeoning understanding, what would it mean for her to take an even bolder step forward, unlocking faith that was both unstoppable and undeniable? The night sky, a canvas painted with the soft glow of stars, enveloped Jericho, and within its embrace, Rachab's thoughts danced. She could still feel Batya's words echoing in her heart, a gentle urgency urging her to ponder the essence of faith and the possibilities tethered to it. As the laughter of children faded into the cool air, Rachab turned to Batya, her curiosity piqued. But how do we harness this faith? How do we ensure that it stands strong against the storms that threaten to tear us apart? Batya sighed softly, her gaze unwavering as she searched Rachab's eyes. Faith is a journey, my dear, not merely a destination. It is forged in the fires of uncertainty and tempered by the shared laughter and the quiet tears. To harness it, you must first confront your fears. What terrifies you most? The question settled heavily in the air between them, charged with the weight of revelation. Rachab's heart raced, as long-buried fears rose within her of rejection, of loneliness, of the walls that could keep her at bay from the world outside. I fear being abandoned, she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. That what I build will crumble, leaving me exposed. Batya nodded, her expression understanding. A fear shared by many. But remember, even in our vulnerability, we find strength. Each time you reach out, despite fear, you are solidifying the bond of community and nurturing the soil where faith can flourish. Reach out, the words lingered on Rachab's lips, steeped in promise. But to whom? Batya looked to the children, still playing nearby. Start with those who collect joy from your laughter, those who mirror your fears, your neighbors, your kin. You have woven yourself into their lives already. Be the river that flows between hearts. As the invitation to action sunk in, Rachab recalled her own journey, the choices that had led her to this moment. The crimson thread tied to her window, her very soul interlaced with that of the Israelites beyond the walls, felt alive with purpose. What if she dared to reach out, not just to elude her fears but to bring light and courage to others? Just then, the distant sound of drums began to echo through the air, a rhythmic pulse that thrummed beneath the stars. The children paused in their play, eyes wide with wonder, while the elders exchanged looks of recognition. The drums were a reminder of something ancient, something profound, a gathering, perhaps, or a call to arms. Tonight, they prepare for battle, Batya mused, her voice laced with conviction. It is a night for confrontation, for sowing courage amongst the people. You must decide if your heart is to follow or to remain in safety. Rachab felt the stirrings of something potent at the core of her being. What if her heart could echo the beats of the drums, united with the intentions of her community? A hopeful spark ignited within her as she envisioned joining the gathering, standing shoulder to shoulder with her neighbors, amplifying their courageous hearts and shared faith. If I join, Rachab said slowly, a blend of fear and excitement in her tone, will it truly matter? Can one voice, one heart, make a difference against so great a wall? Batya met her gaze, her eyes glimmering with a fire that seemed to transcend the moment. Oh, Rachab, do not underestimate the power of one brave voice. It is the whispers in the dark that change the course of a life, the silent prayers that ignite the dawn. Join your voice to others, and the walls that confine will feel their tremors. With her heart pulsating in rhythm with the drums, Rachab knew she stood at a crossroads, a moment laden with the power of a choice. Could she forge ahead into the unknown, into a convergence of hearts and faith, and amplify the collaborative spirit of Jericho? As the night deepened and the call for unity resounded, Rachab felt the weight of her decision intertwining with the legacy of her past and the looming future, a burgeoning narrative yet to be written. And in this moment of reflection, not only did she yearn to act, but she found herself pondering, what transformative power could arise when the voices of the vulnerable unite against the might of sturdy walls? Would the echoes of their faith endure through both battle and peace, forever altering the landscape of Jericho? The air thrummed with anticipation as Rachab made her way toward the gathering. The rhythmic beat of the drums called to something deep within her, awakening a strength she didn't know she possessed. As her feet carried her closer, the sounds of her community became clearer. Laughter mingled with anxious murmurs, each voice a thread in the fabric of a shared struggle. Stepping into the flickering firelight, Rachab was embraced by the warmth of familiar faces. She could see her neighbors, each one a reflection of the hopes and fears she herself harbored. Their stories were etched into the lines of their brows, their laughter masking a collective tension that swirled around them. Tonight, they sought to prepare for the unknown. A figure emerged from the crowd, men and women whose eyes held the wisdom of generations, leaders of the community who had steered them through storms before. Rachob's heart raced as she approached, drawn to their steady presence. Among them stood Nahor, his voice strong and commanding. "Tonight, we stand on the brink of a challenge," he began, his words resonating with the weight of solemnity. "The walls of Jericho may hold us captive, but they cannot contain the strength of our faith." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. "Before we unleash our resolve, we must first anchor ourselves in understanding. Faith is not an abstract idea, it thrives in the soil of our struggles." Rachob listened, mesmerized by the resonance of his voice. He spoke of ancestors who faced daunting odds, who carved paths through doubt and emerged resilient like the hardened roots of an ancient tree warring against the wind. Each story he shared felt like a testament to her own life, reverberating with the lessons of vulnerability and connection. "Take a moment," Nahor continued, "to pray, to share a burden with a neighbor. Let us remember that we do not face this trial alone." Rachob felt the murmurs of agreement swell into an intimate hum as groups formed, hands clasped in quiet unity. The air thickened with a palpable spirit. She turned to a woman beside her, a neighbor named Miriam, whose days were filled with labor while her nights were consumed by worries for her children. "I often think that I must be strong," Miriam admitted, her voice trembling slightly as she opened up. "But I find myself wavering. Sometimes I curl inward, afraid of what might come. I fear that too," Rachob confided, the barriers she had built around her heart beginning to dissolve. "And yet here we are, surrounded by this community. Perhaps it's our fragility that binds us, that makes us stronger." Miriam smiled, and Rachob felt an unexpected surge of courage. "Shall we pray together?" she offered, and together they bent their heads, invoking the divine with whispered words of hope and unification. As the gathering swayed to the sounds of drums once more, Rachob marveled at how the energy shifted with each heartfelt prayer. For the first time, she sensed the very pulse of faith connecting them. Within the sanctuary of shared vulnerability, she realized that uncertainty no longer felt like a heavy weight but rather a canvas upon which new stories could be painted. Then a silence fell over the crowd as the elders began to chant, their deep voices echoing ancient truths. "We are here, we are united. Our fears will not bind us, for we are more than walls, we are the breath of possibility." The harmonic chorus reverberated against the stone, each syllable breathed life into her convictions, awakening a sense of purpose within Rachob's soul. But as the chants grew louder, so too did her unease. She questioned the fate that awaited them in the morning. Was sheer faith enough to dismantle the walls that towered over them? Could their vulnerability truly summon the courage to fasten their fates together? Rachob's heart echoed with countless possibilities, yet, with each beat came the weight of anxiety. As she absorbed the collective energy swirling around her, she understood that faith was deeply woven into their disparate stories. But would this faith be mightier than the formidable barriers they faced? As the fire cracked and sparks soared into the night, Rachob felt the lingering question dissolve into the cool air: what hidden powers emerge when a community entwines their voices, hearts, and fears as one, calling upon faith to shatter the stone walls that confine them? In the stillness of night, as the shimmer of stars hung low over Jericho, the unmatched resolve of the Israelite community pulsed with a fierce conviction. Rachob stood among them, her feet firmly planted in the soil of her ancestors but her heart soaring toward a future transformed by an unshakable faith. The drums echoed, resonating deeply within her soul, each beat pounding with the promise of liberation and renewal. Joshua moved to the forefront, his silhouette sharp against the flickering firelight. "Tonight, we strike a blow against despair," he proclaimed, his voice booming like thunder. "We carry not just our swords but the invincible power of our faith. As we advance, know that our combined heartbeats echo louder than any wall of stone." Rachob could see the fire igniting in the eyes of the people around her. Hope danced in that warmth, drawing the uncertain and the brave closer together. As they clasped hands, she felt the strength of their vulnerabilities converge into a formidable tide, washing over her fears and doubts. It was time. Joshua led the charge, and like a wave crashing against the shoreline, the people surged forward to face the towering walls that had bound them for so long. Each step felt laden with history, echoing the steps of their ancestors who had faced giants and parted seas. Rachab found herself at the forefront, emboldened. The crimson cord hung prominently around her wrist, a poignant reminder of her choice, her faith. She reached out, weaving her strength with that of her neighbors, each soul reflecting a piece of her story. The closer they came to the walls, the louder the drums grew. With each beat, Rachab's heart harmonized with the collective pulse of the community. They were not merely walking toward a physical boundary, they were harnessing their faith, hopes, and fears into a unified front. She could feel the ground tremble beneath them as if the earth itself recognized the significance of their resolved march. Then, at the crescendo, the trumpet sounded a call to arms, an audible declaration that sent shockwaves through the very air. "We are united," echoed Joshua's commanding voice. "Let faith arise. Let it crumble these walls that confine us." With a deep breath, Rachab closed her eyes as she felt the air swirl around her. The sound of the trumpets mingled with the fervent cries of her people. It was in this moment that she discovered the true miracle of faith. It didn't just act on its own, it flowed through combined hearts willing to rise together. The walls of Jericho trembled. Time seemed to stretch, and she felt the very fabric of destiny shifting. Rachab grasped the crimson cord tightly. Her choice had become more than personal, it had become communal, and then, in a breathtaking flash, the earth shook with a force fueled by their collective belief. Walls that had stood majestic and resolute for generations began to fracture, loosening their stranglehold on the land. Dust billowed into the sky like a herald of new beginnings. In that instant, the tension between fear and faith broke, unleashing a roar of triumph that reverberated through the streets of Jericho. As the walls came crashing down, cheers erupted from the people. Rachab's heart burst with joy, tears of freedom cascading down her cheeks. Here in this magnificent chaos, she felt reborn. The burdens of her past, her homeless wanderings, her labels, and her fears were swept away in the exhilarating embrace of grace. Yet, amid the revelry, Rachab knew this moment was not solely for her, it was for every voice that had long sought to be heard, every heart that had yearned for redemption. The crimson cord symbolized not just a promise of safety, but the reminder that through courageous choice, every individual could contribute to the unraveling of oppressive walls both around and within them. As the dust settled and the jubilant shouts echoed off the now liberated ground, Rachab could see the citizens of Jericho. She saw them for who they could truly be, free and united, shedding the shadows of resentment and fear. Hand in hand, they met in the heart of new beginnings. In this transformative moment, she understood. Faith was not merely a weapon against barriers, it was a bridge, a tapestry woven from struggles and triumphs, binding every heart into a living, breathing testament of hope. In a voice that resonated not just with her own spirit but the very essence of the community around her, Rachab raised her hands to the heavens. "Let us rise together. For every act of faith we champion can dismantle the walls of our past and illuminate the future with unyielding light." As their voices lifted in unison, a powerful revelation rippled through the night. When hearts unite in unwavering faith, they become unstoppable forces of change, capable of shattering not just the walls of cities, but the limitations we often set upon ourselves. Rachab knew that this was not the end but merely the beginning of a journey, a collective odyssey toward reclamation, love, and an ever-resilient faith that would echo through generations to come. In this newfound truth, they had found liberation not just from the crumbling walls of Jericho, but from fear itself, forever changed by the power of belief and community, a legacy that would ripple through the ages. And as dawn broke over the horizon, breathing life into what lay ahead, Rachab felt ready to embrace her place in the story of faith, a story that would be written anew with every brave step along the way.